Hey guys, it's Mary, and welcome back to another episode of Crazy Enough. Y'all, I am so glad you're here. And I'm going to tell you right now, you definitely don't want to miss this one because today we're diving into betrayal. Before I get there, I just want to thank you, truly, for being here, for listening, for following along with my journey. And also, let me say this. As I tell this story, I'm going to be respectful. I'm not naming names. I'm not trying to drag anybody. I'm simply sharing my truth and the lessons I learned. Because here's the truth. Betrayal in business happens. It happens more than we think. And I honestly believe it's a rite of passage, especially in entrepreneurship. Painful? Yes. But it can grow you in ways nothing else can. So let me take you back to where it all started. This story really begins at the very start of Salt and Pepper. Back then, it was just me and a dream, right? And I had this young woman who I previously knew from work we did together for a nonprofit organization. And we had stayed in touch, and from time to time, we did freelance type work for each other. Eventually, she started helping me out here and there, and it was nothing formal. I'd pay her hourly when I needed help, and she'd come over when I was busy. And as the jobs picked up, her role grew. And by the time we were in that infamous puke green warehouse, you know the one if you've been following me for a while, she was working full time. And let me be fair, she was good. She was really good. She was an incredible project manager. She could organize, track details, keep orders moving. And she had this charm about her that made people like her. Clients liked her. And in many ways, she felt like a sister to me. That love-hate sibling kind of vibe. You bicker, you roll your eyes, but underneath it, you think, this person's got my back. At least that's what I thought. But looking back now, I see the cracks that were always there. She wasn't always kind. Sometimes she was just flat out rude, disrespectful. And what I didn't know then, but I know now, is that she was talking about me behind my back to friends, to colleagues, even to clients. And even worse, she would take my instructions or Jonathan's and she would walk right back out to the warehouse and she'd tell the team they didn't need to follow them. And if we came up with a better system, she mocked it, ridiculed it, made it seem like we were foolish for even trying. She'd eventually go along, but she'd fight it every step of the way. And that kind of undermining doesn't just stop with me. It sets the wrong tone for the whole entire team. And here's the thing. I brushed it off. I let it happen. I told myself, this must be what a close working relationship is like, right? You fight, you clash, but it's normal. But it wasn't normal. It was toxic. And to kind of paint a picture for you guys, here's how our roles worked. I was the visionary, the creative, the one pitching, designing, pulling concepts together, bringing in the work. She was the operator, the one managing the shipping, talking to the clients about the logistics and the coordination and the mailing addresses and ordering the product and making sure that everything went out on time. And we used to joke about it. I brought the butter and she buttered the toast. So silly. And on the surface, that worked. But underneath, there was something darker going on. She was undermining me, gaslighting me, and making me question myself, my decisions, my communication, my leadership. And that's what manipulation does. It doesn't just hit you all at once. It creeps in, slowly, day by day, until you start doubting yourself, until you start thinking, maybe I really can't do this without her. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And for years, my gut told me something wasn't right. And I ignored it. I just pushed it to the side. All right, so now that you guys have that little backstory, I want to fast forward to 2022. Jonathan proposes to me on my birthday. Yay, happy day, guys. And then in 2023, we got married. And somewhere in there, Jonathan actually officially joins the Salt and Pepper team. I want to say August was about when it happened. And that's when everything shifted. Because Jonathan is a detail-oriented person. He started managing the warehouse, overseeing the finances, making sure fulfillment was done correctly. He was cleaning things up, tightening the ship. And she wasn't just undermining me, right? She tried to wedge herself in between Jonathan and me too. And Jonathan is a former auditor. He notices the details, and he wasn't going to miss what she was doing. And that's when she really panicked, when she realized the days of getting away with things were over. So she started plotting the meetings behind my back, an exit strategy brewing, while she was still smiling to my face. And then April came, and she told me she was resigning. Now, this is where it gets wild. So she sat me down and she said her best friend, one of her quote unquote closest friends, had passed away. And not only that, this friend had apparently left her a house in another country. Y'all, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, who leaves a house to a friend? Family? Sure. A spouse, kids, nieces, nephews? Yes, 100% yes. But a friend? And in another country? But she knew me. She knew if she didn't have a detailed, elaborate story, I'd start asking questions. So she built one. She said she wanted to take her mom traveling while she still could. She said that she was set for life. She never had to work again because of what her friend had left her. And then she said, because our wedding was coming up on June 10th, she didn't want to leave me high and dry. She would stay until after the wedding and make sure everything was okay. And then she'd step away. And at the time, I believed her. I thought, okay, at least she's making this transition easier. And honestly, I was just so focused on planning the wedding that I let it go. But in reality, it was all a cover, a smokescreen. Behind the scenes, she was plotting. She was buying time, planting seeds, and building her own business off of mine. And I let her stay. Why? Because I was overwhelmed. I was planning a wedding, I was juggling everything, and the last thing I wanted was a shakeup at work. So I told myself better to keep her around until after the wedding. I was in survival mode. I also wasn't 100% sure she was doing this, but I had my suspicions. Now, let me tell you how I actually figured this all out, because it was one big puzzle, right? That I had to piece together piece by piece. And one of the first red flags was a rush order, and it was for 1,000 sublimation mugs. We needed them in 2 days, and it was Memorial Day weekend. So she comes to me with this quote from this new vendor, and it was $15 per mug. And I'm like, $15? I've been in this business long enough to know that that's insane, especially if you're ordering 1,000 mugs, even with a rush. So I did what I always do, right? I dug around, I called a couple of vendors, and I found one. And he said, I can help you. I can do the 1,000 mugs, but it's going to be really, really expensive. And remember, in the back of my mind, I have this $15 price tag. So he tells me, right, it's going to be expensive. It'll be $7 a mug, half the price. And that's when it clicked. She wasn't bringing me quotes. She was the vendor. She was inflating numbers and pocketing the difference. So I asked her to send me a W-9 for this new vendor because I was suspicious, right? And so I looked it up, and sure enough, the company was registered in her name. And it didn't stop there. There were custom cookies. Same story. Pretending it was some vendor that she found, but really it was her setup, marked up sky high. And then there were tumblers. Again, inflated pricing, pretending it was outsourced when in reality she was funneling the business through her own company. Each time she lied to me and she lied to the clients. And here's another layer. For over a year after she left, I kept getting remittance notices from a supplier portal. Why? Because when she was setting up her business, her accounts, her systems, she used her salt and pepper email. So every single notification landed in my inbox until she realized it. Imagine that. I had proof in black and white of what she was doing. And if that's not enough, she submitted fake invoices. She forged a W-9, something that is a federal crime. That's tax fraud, perjury. It's unbelievable what risk people will take when greed takes over. She was also manipulating my team. She'd go out to the warehouse in the mornings and she'd tell the team things like, "Oh, I already talked to Mary. She said just send it out," even when I hadn't. She'd tell employees I was disappointed in their work, conversations I never had. She literally made up conversations out of thin air. Think about that. Imagine someone walking around planning fake stories about you, turning people against you, and because she was so convincing, people believed her. She even tried to triangulate between me and Jonathan. She tried to play us against each other, which is just disgusting. And the craziest part, on the surface, she looked like a superstar, smiling, charming, always helpful. No one would ever guess the manipulation going on behind the scenes. But I felt it every morning on those phone calls as we drove into work. I never knew which version of her I was going to get. Was she going to be cheerful? Because we knew that was going to be a good day. Or was she going to be in a bad mood that would just make you kind of shrivel up inside like a raisin? Ugh, I can still feel it. Ugh. I never knew. And that's what it was like day after day, walking on eggshells. Exhausting, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And after the wedding, I approached her. I wrote an email and I said, "I have been informed," that's the key word, informed. I did not accuse her. I said, "I have been informed that XYZ is your company." And for 3 days, there was radio silence, nothing. And then the email came, pages long, full of gaslighting. Why am I guilty for wanting to help a small business? Why is it wrong for me to start my own company? And listen, starting a business isn't wrong. In fact, if anybody knows me, I'm going to be the one to encourage it. But doing it behind my back, lying to me, stealing clients, that's betrayal. And that's exactly what she did. Overnight, she took one of our largest clients, $1 million of revenue, gone. And that crushed me. And let me just pause here for a second, because at first, yeah, anyone would be upset. I was upset. But in retrospect, when I look back at this situation, and I think if a client really jumps ship that fast after 5 years of working together, then something's not right there either. And I had to ask myself, would I actually want to keep doing business with a person or a company like that? I don't care how big the company is. The answer is no, because like attracts like. And if they left with her, then maybe they weren't truly aligned with me or salt and pepper in the first place. And every vendor and client that I introduced her to, she tried to go after she left. But here's the thing. Every single one of those vendors that she went to, they said no. Their loyalty stayed with me. And that was a powerful reminder, right? That integrity matters. Relationships matter. And people, they notice. Because at the same time this was happening, right? There was the writer's strike, then there was the actor's strike. And the bank called our line of credit. I mean, talk about waves of 3. And keep in mind that I had just gotten married, right? I'm supposed to be elated. It's supposed to be the happiest time in my life. But in actuality, I was depressed. I was angry. I was questioning everything. And Jonathan, God bless him, he was by my side, trying to crunch numbers, trying to problem solve, while all I wanted to do was pull my hair out and scream. And here's the thing, I needed to go through that. I needed to grieve. Because betrayal is grief. You cycle through it. The anger, the sadness, the confusion, the denial, right? You go through that before you finally hit acceptance. And it took me some time to get there, to move out of the victim mode, to stop asking why me and actually start asking what's next. And that's where onward comes in. Because yes, I played the victim for a while, but at some point you have to get back up. You have to put one foot in front of the other, crawl if you have to, then walk, and then eventually run. But here we are, right? And maybe I'm not running yet. Maybe I'm walking at a steady pace. But the one thing that I do know is that running is coming. And this betrayal, this $1 million loss, it hurt. But it also created space. Space for me to build Crazy Enough, to launch By Noon Candles, and to rebuild on stronger foundations for Salt and Pepper. So that's my story. It's messy, it's painful, $1 million betrayal, but it's also the catalyst that allowed me to move onward. And if you've been betrayed, whether in business or in life, hear me when I say this, you can move onward too. And before I close, let me share the 5 biggest lessons that I learned from this betrayal. 1, listen to your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Number 2, pay attention to how people treat you privately versus publicly, because charm doesn't always equal loyalty. And number 3, trust but verify. Look at the paperwork. Ask for the W-9. Protect your business. Number 4, don't excuse the toxic behavior, because it doesn't get better with time. It only festers and it only builds. And 5, pain can be a platform. As awful as it was, this betrayal created space for me to start things I never would have otherwise. And here's one last thing. Betrayal doesn't just happen in business. It happens in friendships, in families, in marriages. It's part of being human. And what matters most isn't the betrayal itself, but what you do with it after. So next week, we're going to be talking about faith, which is the 3rd candle in By Noon. Because without faith, I wouldn't have made it through. And for the first time, I'll be bringing in a guest so you guys can hear not only my perspective, but also someone else's journey. I can't wait. Until next time, stay brave, stay bold, and stay crazy enough.